And here's your prescription.
I know just the pharmacy to get this filled.
Who are you?
A pharmacy benefit manager. A middleman your insurer uses to decide which medicines you can get, what you pay, and sometimes even which pharmacy you should go to.
Why can't I go to a pharmacy in my neighborhood?
Because I make more money when you go to a pharmacy I own.
No one should stand between you and your medicine. Visit phrma.org/middleman to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
This episode is brought to you by Vital Farms. Isn't it bullshit to have to question where your food comes from? At Vital Farms, you can trace your pasture-raised eggs all the way back to the source, the pasture. On the side of each pasture-raised carton of eggs, you'll find the name of the farm where your eggs were laid. And when you look the farm up on their website, you'll get a peek at all the sunshine, fresh air, and open space the hens enjoy. Learn more and find out where to buy them at vitalfarms.com. Vital Farms, keeping it bullshit-free.
This is Optimal Finance Daily, episode 2554. When in Doubt, Be Generous, by Jeff Goins of goinswriter.com. And I'm your host and personal finance enthusiast, Diana Merriam. Welcome back to a bonus Sunday episode. I do this once a week so we can hear a little more content to optimize our lives. An extra episode from one of the other shows where we read articles to you. Today, I'm sharing one from Optimal Living Daily. If you enjoy it, you can follow or subscribe in your favorite podcast app for daily episodes. So with that, here's Justin from Optimal Living Daily as we optimize your life.
When in Doubt, Be Generous, by Jeff Goins of goinswriter.com. Do you know what the biggest secret to a successful life is? Be generous. It's so simple and yet so easy to ignore. Here's why. We think that being generous is something we do once we get famous, and that's not how it works at all. A friend of mine just shared this, quote, "Anytime I start getting scared of running out of something, I give away something. I have more than enough love, money, work, friendship, food, time, and energy to share, always," end quote. I agree. The secret to getting more is to give more. The most successful people I know are not hoarders, quite the opposite, in fact. And here's my belief on that. Successful people are not generous because they're successful. They're successful because they're generous. Certainly you run across your occasional Scrooges, but in my experience, those people are the exception, not the norm. That's just what I've seen in my whole life, so I'm not speaking for everyone, obviously. But that's enough experience to convince me of an important lesson. When in doubt, be generous. When you have an opportunity to get versus give, go ahead and give. Generosity as a growth strategy. I remember starting my blog back in 2010. It wasn't growing, people weren't reading, and I wasn't having fun. So I decided to shift something. Realizing I wasn't doing my best work, I decided to do the opposite. I was afraid that if I gave away my best writing on my blog, no one would want to pay me for my best work. But that kind of scarcity thinking wasn't really working. So I made one simple shift. I decided to start giving away my best work for free. Here's what happens when you do that. Two things, actually. Number one, people start to notice when you give your best work away for free. Why? Because it's generous. It makes people think, she gave me all this for free? Wow. Not only that, they trust you even more, believing that paying you would bring even greater value. Which brings me to point number two, you do better work. Look, you don't have a ceiling on what you're capable of. You can keep improving. When I started giving away A+ content on my blog, I started writing better content. When the time came to write a book, I was a much better writer. As you give your work away, your capacity to do better work increases. It has to. So that's a simple short lesson here today. Do your best work for free right now. Give it all away. But wait a second, Jeff. Don't you say to never work for free? That's right. In Real Artists Don't Starve, one of the rules is just that. Don't work for free. But here's the catch. You need to always work for something, and that something doesn't have to be money. When you share a photo on Instagram, you are practicing in public. You are putting your work on display for people to see. You aren't working for free. You're earning people's attention. The same principle applies when you write on your blog for free. You're working for email subscribers, or at least you should be. So yes, value your work, but always be generous with it. Give it away in the places where people will pay attention to you. That doesn't mean you have to give all your work away or that you can't charge for what you do at the same time. It just means that when in doubt, it's almost always a good rule to be generous. Why? Because as my friend said, it sets you free from fear. It makes you a better person. So pay for that friend's lunch today when you both awkwardly look at the check. Spend some of that extra bit of time, in spite of feeling busy, with someone who is hurting. Give it all away. I've always loved this Annie Dillard quote. It's about writing, but really I think it applies to any of us who have a gift to share with this world. Quote, spend it all, shoot it, play it, lose it, all, right away, every time. Do not hoard what seems good for a later place in the book or for another book. Give it all, give it now. The impulse to save something good for a better place later is a signal to spend it now. Something more will arise for later, something better. These things fill from behind, from beneath, like well water. Similarly, the impulse to keep to yourself what you have learned is not only shameful, it is destructive. Anything you do not give freely and abundantly becomes lost to you. You open your safe and find ashes, end quote. And when you feel fear telling you this is not a good idea, remember that's what fear does. It tries to keep you quiet. Anything you hold on to eventually turns to dust. You just listened to the post titled, When in Doubt, Be Generous, by Jeff Goins of GoinsWriter.com.
Labor strikes, climate change, your beat up office printer. What do they all have in common? Come on, it's all about the money. Economics is everywhere and everything, fueling our lives, even where we least expect it. If you're a fan of Optimal Finance Daily and are curious to learn something new and exciting about economics every week, I recommend you listen to the Planet Money podcast from NPR. Planet Money is a different kind of world where the complex economy actually makes sense, where human stories supersede abstract theories. For example, credit scores may sound complex, but Planet Money can give you simple tips so that you can make better financial decisions. And Planet Money also answers some of life's burning questions, like, will AI take over our jobs? And why are Christmas trees so darn expensive? The Planet Money team lives to tell a good story in around 30 minutes. It's econ for the rest of us. Tune in to Planet Money every week for entertaining stories and insights about how money shapes our world. Stories that can't be found anywhere else. Listen now to Planet Money from NPR, wherever you get your podcasts.
And here's your prescription.
I know just the pharmacy to get this filled.
Who are you?
A pharmacy benefit manager. A middleman your insurer uses to decide which medicines you can get, what you pay, and sometimes even which pharmacy you should go to.
Why can't I go to a pharmacy in my neighborhood?
Because I make more money when you go to a pharmacy I own.
No one should stand between you and your medicine. Visit phrma.org/middleman to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
Thank you to Jeff. This one was super applicable to me personally, as this podcast is free, unless you're getting the ad-free version, but that's only $2 a month. So at that rate, it's almost free. That comes out to like 6 or 7 cents per episode. But even that started way after the actual launch of this show. In the beginning, in fact, the first 9 months or so, I didn't have any sponsors at all, no income from this podcast really. And I always tried my best with my narration, with the microphone, editing. You should ask my business partner, Lee. I spent a lot of time editing, I still do, and many people would just gloss over it, but it's because I want the podcast to sound a certain way. And if it doesn't, then I don't feel like I'm giving it my best. Sometimes I think maybe only 5 to 10% of people will notice the tiny changes I'm making when I edit the show, but to me, that takes the podcast from okay to good or great. And after doing this podcast for a couple of months, the minimalists asked me to narrate all of their books to turn them into audiobooks. I had zero experience producing an audiobook, so I had to learn the ins and outs of that. And the rate I charged was laughable. It was very low. Not quite free, but for the amount of time spent recording 3 full books and doing the editing on it myself, it might as well have been free. But do I regret it? Nope. A magazine gave me an award for the work on their book, Everything That Remains. This podcast got more visibility thanks to the minimalists. This podcast won Best Health Podcast thanks to you, and it's all been because of what Jeff talked about in this post. And with all that said, it's definitely not easy. It's a lot of work with a lot of uncertainty if you're not making money, but worth it in the end. So thank you for being part of the journey with me and sticking around. You listening and the authors letting me narrate their work is what keeps all of this going. It really means a lot. Have a great rest of your day and start to your weekend if you're listening in real time, and I'll see you tomorrow, where optimal life awaits.